President Nelson Mandela's words that day set the tone for a country that was in the throes of upheaval and uncertainty. It was a combination of strength and modesty. It was firm, but it was also reassuring. His words were delivered with the gravity and humility of a man whose life forever stands as a testimony to the victory of reconciliation over retribution, of the olive branch over the gun, and of coexistence over conflict. He spoke of many things, but above all of them, he said, the need to unite the people of South Africa is as important a task now as it has always been. In saying these words, he laid the cornerstone of what would become the edifice of a non-racial, united, and democratic South Africa, the central key objective of his organization, the African National Congress. These words were as true today as they were back then. They were words that brought hope to the downtrodden and the dispossessed. They brought courage to the despondent and even the cynical. They brought comfort to millions of our white compatriots who feared that this man, that this racist government had so demonized and maligned, would declare that they should be driven into the sea. It is easy for those with the benefit of hindsight to decry the choices and the decisions made by the founding fathers and mothers of this country during these turbulent times. And it is easy for those who decry what Madiba did to sit back and be critical of the leadership that he provided as he sought to mesh us into a nation. The winds of change were sweeping across the land. The African National Congress and other liberation movements had been unbanned, and their leadership were making their way home from exile. The government was bankrupt, and the economy was in free fall, rendering the state the liberation movement stood to inherit hollow and weakened. The right wing were mobilizing and marshalling their forces of intolerance to railroad the negotiation process. Many of the doomsday prophets said it would be impossible under these conditions to bring South Africa back from the brink. And yet, coming together as a nation, we did, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, who had vision and foresight, who had the strength of the organization that he led. There is one singular reality of which we should never ever lose sight. It is that historic speech made by Madiba on these steps 30 years ago played a pivotal role in determining the future trajectory of this country. The speech right here, preceded by the walkout of Victor Verster, that was televised around the world, will forever adorn the chronicles of South Africa's liberation history. Following Madiba's release, negotiations that the ANC and Madiba had long called for got underway. These negotiations would culminate in our historic democratic elections, where Nelson Mandela became the first president of a new South Africa. That was the moment when we had a real president, in this country. That was the moment when we felt we had our own president at last. Nearly everyone who set eyes on Madiba for the first time knew immediately that they were looking and seeing a president. He looked like a president. He spoke like a president. He walked like a president. Those who also saw him eating say that they could see that he was eating like a president. Even those who saw him asleep at times, they said he slept like a president. And some would even say he dreamt like a president. At last, South Africa had its own president in none other than Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Now, with the greatest statesman and icon of resistance, Nelson Mandela affirming his commitment to reconciliation, to dialogue, to negotiation, to putting differences aside in pursuit of the greater good, it would indeed have been impossible for those of far lesser stature to resort to warmongering or to even talk of revenge. There are many lessons we can draw from the life of our nation's founding father. They will have been expounded upon earlier today to all of you young people in the dialogue that the Nelson Mandela Foundation organized. But the most enduring legacy President Mandela bequeathed this generation is the understanding that to achieve a bigger goal, sacrifices and compromises are necessary, be they personal or professional, and that the greater good must at all times triumph over self-interest and self-preservation. On that historic day 30 years ago, Utatu Nelson Mandela spoke of the struggle having reached a decisive moment. Uye wathi Utatu Madiba, wathi kudala silindile, kudala silindele lenkululeko, siyayifuna ngoku, asisafuni ukulinda nosuku olunye. Today now we are indeed at a decisive moment as well as a nation. We know that our country is facing many challenges. We too can no longer wait. The state of the economy, the high levels of unemployment, the social ills wreaking havoc in our communities, the shameful killing of women and girls, the stench of corruption and abuse of public funds have led to a trust deficit with our citizens. And this threatens to reverse our democratic gains.